This is a Public Art Advisory Committee meeting for Monday, July 19th at 3:30 p.m. This meeting is compliant with the Governor's Executive Order N-08-21 issued on June 11th, 2021, allowing for deviation of teleconference rules required by the Brown Act. The purpose of this is to provide the safest environment for staff, committee members, and the public while allowing for public participation. The public may address the committee using exclusively remote public comment options. The committee may take action on any item listed here on the agenda. Public comments may be here by joining this meeting via email aibera@brisbaneca.org or via text 415-407-2675. And it looks like we are all here. Absent is Lisa Greenlee. First item of business, approval of minutes. Approved minutes from June 28th, 2021 Public Art Advisory Committee.
I move that we approve the minutes.
I second it.
Okay. And from here, I'll pass it on to Stuart.
I was gonna say, do we need to do a roll call vote nowadays or not?
Oh, sure. Better safe than sorry.
Okay,
Mayor Cunningham,
Aye.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Park and Rec Commissioner Bologoff,
Aye.
Park and Rec Commissioner Greenlee is absent. Committee Member Danette Davis,
Aye.
Committee Member Grossman,
You're muted, Beth.
I'm not sure what is approving the minutes. Sorry.
approving the
read the
minutes would be saying that the minutes are reflective of the meeting we had last time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just got in from out of town, so I didn't get a chance to read him.
You
And
could
are-
abstain.
I'll abstain.
and you're present, and Committee Member Camille Salmon. You're muted.
You're muted again.
Apologize. I would say aye, but I wasn't present for the last meeting.
No, it's for this
Yeah,
one that
aye.
you're present. Great,
Yes, for this one. It was a roll call. Yes,
yes.
that's what I thought.
All right, go ahead, Stuart.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda after the approval of the minutes is reviewing the Public Art Fund. I have attached a memo regarding how money is put into the Public Art Fund. And I also attached a spreadsheet showing what the cash balance was as of June 30th, showing the amount of money we have received from the different projects and the amount of interest that we've earned through May 31st. And
Stuart,
as of,
I'm sorry, is there a way to share the screen? Because for me, if I look at the minutes and all the other things, then I lose presently what's going on.
Oh,
And I
okay.
don't have, oh, thank you, Angel. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
nope, that makes sense. See, I have mine, I have a sheet of paper in front of me, so that's why I'm able to do it. And if we go to the last page. Okay. So we have a cash balance as of May 31st of $1,112,895.29. We have two commitments outstanding against this amount at the moment. $25,000 for the mural at Midtown Market and $20,000 for the installation of the art piece at the library, for a total commitment of $45,000, which means that we have $1,067,895.29 in the fund available for other projects. And if this kind of a format works for everybody, my understanding is that you would want me to keep this updated on a quarterly basis. is what I heard last time. Beth, you're muted.
Was the full library installation 20,000, or is that what was left from a down payment?
That's what's left. That's what's left after the 50,000. We already spent 30,000.
Okay.
And I will tell you that the mural might cost us more than the 25,000 when all is said and done. The restoration work is somewhere close to 25,000, and Mona has yet to tell me what she thinks the cost will be. And so as soon as I can find that out, I will probably need to go back to council to get a little bit of a further authorization. Talking with Mona and Kieran, I think we are going to try and get the restoration of the mural sometime in January of 2022. Mona has time on her calendar for January. Kieran thinks that that would be a good time for that to happen. So,
Do I have a question?
yes.
January, I mean, God willing, we'll have some rain. How will that affect this? That doesn't sound great to me.
You know, is trying to fit into Mona's schedule, so I do not know exactly how that will work. The rain might actually help us with the cleaning some of the mural, because part of what they need to do is actually wash the mural off. So hopefully we'll get rain before they actually do the restoration, so there'll be a little bit savings there. But yes, I mean, hopefully we can get it done. It's just trying to get people who are very well-known to get on their calendars. And every time I ask, I keep getting pushed off.
Could we at least ask her for maybe a later date as well?
Sure.
Look at, I mean, January just seems so dangerous.
That
I
makes
agree,
sense.
Karen. I think it would be important for us to say, if weather permitting and we're unable to, for you to attend to this in January, we would like for you to carve out some times when the weather is more appropriate.
Which,
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously my goal is to try and get it done as soon as I can, but I will ask her for another date if it's raining in January.
thanks to it.
So that was that item on the agenda.
Beth has her hand raised here.
Oh, sorry, Beth.
Yeah, I mean, just as a working artist, I think that you may want to give her the option to just change the January date, because if, you know, given that there could be rain, because for her to book in 2 different times is probably not going to be advantageous to her. So I would give her the option to change it to the dry times.
Sure. I will check with her and say, you know, I'll check with her and let her know that January is a little bit more rainy, as I'm sure she would be aware of as well. So I will check with her, and I'll check with Kieran about the restoration work that she needs to do, and what would happen if it was raining while she was trying to do the restoration work, and if it would be better to schedule it for March or April instead.
Yeah, just tell her our concern is that if it's raining, we don't want to wait another year
Right.
before
Exactly.
we'd get on her calendar. I mean, really, that's what it's about.
Yep.
Yes. I will do that.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda was discussing the committee's work plan for 21-22. And based off of the conversation at the last meeting, it seemed as if the 2 major items on the work plan would be developing a public art guidelines for the Baylands, and then developing public art guidelines and potential projects for Visitation Avenue. And what I heard from the committee at the last meeting was the desire to bring in some type of art consultant to help the committee with both of these types of projects. So in order for me to be able to write an RFP to develop for the art consultant for the Baylands, I think part of the conversation today for the committee would be to discuss what types of criteria and experiences that you would want to have a public art consultant help, what kinds of experiences they would have, and what kind of work that they would have us be able to look at from them, so I can begin drafting a request for proposals or request for qualifications, so the committee could review potential people who can do this. So,
I can start just because I have kind of a list in my head that I think, and everybody, I think it's important that the person that we're looking for has connections with various national art institutions and art schools, you know, Parsons, Chicago Art Institute, that they're aware of these institutions and what has come out of that, as well as someone who's also aware and has knowledge of artists who might have private large sculptural galleries or shows, or I would guess maybe warehouses, that artists that do large scale work, that we would want to make sure that they're aware of people like that. I'm thinking of like the Baylands for that, or I don't know, man, but I think they need to be someone who understands that.
You know what else just sort of popped into my head too, Stuart, was, you know, the Sierra Point project is a completely different scale of animal, and the Baylands is just this massive beast. So maybe we should be looking for two different kind of people. I mean, what Camille just said obviously makes so much sense for the Baylands, is, you know, getting someone who has a lot of experience with huge projects. But the Sierra Point project's kind of small.
Sierra Point meaning, I'm sorry, what's the Sierra Point project?
yeah, I was thinking that we would talk about visitation today. If we want to talk about Sierra Point, we can add that to a future agenda. And the reason I picked visitation is because the committee in the past has talked about trying to add art to visitation.
Sorry, I heard Sierra Point. Maybe that was too.
I also think this person should have knowledge of curating and curators.
And yes, and I will agree with you, Karen, that I think maybe you would want two different types of people, one for the Baylands and one for visitation. And then if we get a good person for visitation, maybe looking at, you know, them being able to help us on Sierra Point as well. But I think the sense I have is it's two different types of art that you're looking for. As Beth has said, is, you know, on the Baylands, you're looking for somebody who has more of a sense of the grand landscape of art as well, and how it fits into the natural environment. Whereas on visitation, it's already a built environment, and that may be a different skill set that you're looking for. So other types of ideas for somebody who might help us with the Baylands?
Well, of course, we want them to have had, Baylands. Yes, either case, we want someone who's had experience. We'd
Well,
like
that's
to know where they're some people are going to come without experience. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at them, but if we're making our wish list.
Right. I mean, we could do, you know, experience preferred. Beth, and then Danette. I see Danette.
Beth, you're muted.
I saw Beth's first.
Thank you. We have the pile driving from Sierra Point makes it impossible to leave my microphone on. It's so loud. So anyways, I just wanted to say that I think that probably even before we are putting out an RFQ or RFP, we need to do a lot of research and look at some of the, if we're thinking about the Baylands, we have to look at some of the iconic land art and earthwork arts that have happened around the country. And Nevada is one of them, as a state that has a lot of it. And I think I mentioned that Nevada Art Museum is having a big symposium on land art in the fall. So I think that what we really need to do is we need to educate ourselves. And then from there, we can sort of determine what kinds of things we could envision for land like the Baylands, and then find out who worked on them, and find out how they did it, you know, really do some research, because honestly, even though I know that world, I can't think of a single kind of art consultant that isn't somebody that, you know, does basically hotel art and airport art and, you know, those kinds of projects. And that's not really what we're looking for. We're also going to need somebody that can really work directly with architects and landscape designers and that kind of thing, but isn't one of them. It's like a whole, you know, like that they can work with them. And then finally, I just want to say again that each one of these projects is really going to be a lot of work and is going to need several liaisons. And I think that we also are going to want to be able to hire some artist liaisons so that we really can follow through and that they can keep us abreast, and we can make sure that we have a chance to review work in progress and make sure that we're on the right track, because some of these projects are going to be very large and multifaceted and over a long period of time. And I don't think anyone on this committee is going to have the time to do that as unpaid work. And that's the way I've seen other arts commissions work in other countries, you know, where they have like, they hire artists to be liaisons.
I mean, and I think that makes sense as we're moving through. This part of the project was to develop the guidelines so that way as public art is beginning to be put into place and before the project is begun, that there's an overall, as you've talked about in the past, Beth, there's an overall sense of what types of art you would want and where you would want that art to make it look more cohesive. As opposed to actually working to get those pieces into place. Getting the pieces into place is probably 10 to 15 years down the road. This is more developing the guidelines that the architects and the developer would be looking at when they're looking at public art throughout their project, and obviously working with the city council to say where would public art make sense given the design that the developer is talking about.
I do agree with Karen too, that they could be two different consultants, or we may have several different ones for different kinds of projects. And I appreciate, Stuart, that you you differentiated between artists working in a built environment and artists doing land and earthworks.
Right. I'm very good at listening. Danette?
Yeah, so it was a little bit on the lines of Beth. I was thinking that it would be great to have a consultant that's already dealt with bringing art to public spaces. I kind of think that's really important, although it's not necessarily a requirement. And then maybe even somebody who has done a big project, like a whole new project that has been able to work with, you know, in the development stages of a big project such as the Baylands, and to tie in the artwork with that huge project. Also, like Beth said, it would be working with the architects and the whole developer and all the facets of the professionals along the way. So I think those are important criterias when we're looking at a consultant.
And I guess the question for me is the person who helps develop the guidelines the same person who works on working with the developer and the architects to develop the art itself? For me, I could see that being two or multiple different types of people, because you might have guidelines that look at having different styles of art throughout the project. And then you would maybe want consultants who have more specialized understanding of the different types of art that you have throughout the project, and having different consultants to work with on those different types of projects. This one for me is really developing at the stage we're in my mind, and just in my mind, and listening to the committee in the past, is getting a set of guidelines to say that here's the range of art we would like to see. Here's the places where different kinds of art can go. And the question, you know, and what I've heard in the past is that you don't want to have a single type of art throughout a project of this size, but you want to make sure that the art flows in some fashion in this project. So you might have one person help develop the guidelines, but then as Beth has said, and as other people on the committee have said, maybe 3 or 4 different consultants working with the architects on different styles of art who have more specialized experience in those styles. And if the committee would like, I could do research on other large public art projects and bring back at a future committee different different places where public art have been and what they look like. And the committee can say, yeah, these are the ones that we like. Here's the kinds of styles that we would like. Because I could see in this RFP or RFQ saying that we, not only do you want somebody who has the experience of National Art Institutes, being a curator in earthwork and land art, but that we also would like to have somebody who's had experience in helping to design a piece of property that has this type of a range of public art as well.
Stuart, would we have in that realm of things, and the reason I'm saying that is from, you know, me doing the research on big developments and some of the incredible things that I don't know that we would call art or architecture. For example, there was some like small spaces for expressive art, whether it's song, dance, whatever. And those little tiny buildings were art, to me, art in themselves.
Mm.
So do we lock those kind of things into the art thought process as well? Because if it's, you know, small spaces for someone to come play a guitar, and that building itself is a beautiful piece of architecture, are we calling that art too?
I would think that at this point in time, the broader the understanding,
Mm-hmm.
the happier you will be at the end of the process.
Because there were some things that I found just when I was doing my research for that PowerPoint presentation that I gave to the city, there was some beautiful little tiny buildings that we used for performance art. And I'm like, wow, they're totally pieces of art in my mind on their own. So that was kind of a pleasant shock for me when I was just researching things. It wasn't something I had to do, you guys. It was interesting to me. It's like, okay, you know, what does passive and active recreation look like on the Baylands?
Right.
And sort of in that process, all
Okay.
these beautiful things kept popping up. And even like the climbing wall that somebody put on the stanchions of an underpass for a freeway, and the large bits of recreation that occurred around that, to me also looked like art, even though it was, you know, it was a recreational facility.
Could I just suggest that I think it would be important to see if there's, as Beth said, to research. Reno has an amazing public arts kind of collaboration and partnership, and they do a lot of it with BlackRock nonprofit, which is a large scale art collaborative of art making. And they have their work all over Reno. And they're going to be part of the fall art showcase as well. And I also think another city that would be interesting to find out what their process was and how they put it together is Seattle. Seattle has wonderful public art. I mean, those places, there are many other places, but those places are closer to us, so to speak. And I think it'd be interesting to see who in those cities, how they went about it, and who did they contact, who were their partnerships with, who did they consult with. All of those, you know, names and connections, I think would be really, really interesting.
Yeah.
I agree with Camille to learn from other cities, but I just want to say that also part of the job of the art consultant would also be trying to help us figure out who are we as Brisbane in the middle of the Bay Area, so that we don't just recreate Reno or Seattle or whatever, and really have something that is that represents who we are, because we're special.
Right, yeah, Beth, I think it's more of finding that out and then finding what their process was.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
then,
right.
because they've done this process on large scale, small scale, surprise scales, with so many collaborations, it would be interesting to know what their, how they went about it. What was their process?
I agree. I love that too, that, surprise scale needs to be an aspect of it too.
Yeah, actually, Madison talked about surprise art quite some time ago, and it's stuck with me as something that would be really fun for us to investigate on visitation.
And Karen, I also really also want to underline that I do think that those kinds of spaces for something performative or gathering to happen are art spaces and should fall into it. But I also want to come back to Stuart. I had sent in my questions, 3 questions several weeks ago about whether or not we can, some of this money eventually in terms of the guidelines can be designated a percentage or something like that to performative and arts programming and education of arts.
Right, and I did send off an email to the city attorney either Thursday or Friday of last week, and he's doing his research to give me an answer to those questions.
Great, thank you, wonderful.
So what I'm hearing is before we really work through developing an RFQ, RFP, or whatever, RFI, or whatever we call it, is you would like me to go out and do research as to other cities, including Reno and Seattle, to see what different types of processes they have for large art type of work. Or citywide, and I guess for those would be more like citywide type of art. Because I think the Baylands we would see as a citywide type of a project, because it's 550 acres of land.
I also think because the Baylands is down, the road a little bit, that if we start with what we know a little bit more, that it'll inform the next steps on what we're doing with the Baylands, so we don't take, bite off more than we can chew, so to speak.
Right. The only caution, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scratch my head at that moment. The only caution to that is the sooner we can start the process of bringing in a consultant to help this committee develop some kind of guidelines, they can be in place prior to the specific plan being approved. And the sense I have from this committee, has been in the past, is that you would like to have the design guide, the art guidelines be fully incorporated within the project and not be an afterthought to the project. And in order to do that, the sooner we can get this process rolling, so that way when the final project comes to council for final approval, the art guidelines are in place and everybody understands what art should be in there, and that could be incorporated within the final approval process.
Yeah, it would probably help the developer too, don't you think? If we can get ahead of the game and have some thought processes.
Yes, and I would imagine that the developer would probably, at some point in time as we're going through this, including the developer in the conversation, so the developer is aware of what's going on and may want, the developer may want to add some thought as to what they're thinking, because public art adds to a development. It's, it shouldn't just be slapped onto a development, but it adds to the whole overall sense of the development. So, okay. But so what I'm hearing from this one is you want me to go and do some research as to other cities that have vibrant public art throughout the city, see what processes that they have for trying, if they have a citywide design process, and if so, who they've used, or if not, who they've used to do some of their bigger installation kinds of types, and how do look at their RFPs for those and to help us work through this process on the Baylands.
The cities, I know Reno does, and I have a feeling Seattle does as well. They not only, they have committees, but in that research, they also have partnerships with other arts organizations that are also feeding information. So it would be important to
Yes.
find out what those are as well, what they're, what, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting because like in Reno, I know the person who started the art committee from a staff perspective years and years ago. And I will tell you that where they are today is very different from where they were 25 years ago when it comes to public art. And I think, you know, part of it is the museum has become a bigger player within it. But the person, when I was there working, they were just starting their Art Town downtown. And that was I think that added a major aspect to Reno becoming more of an art-oriented city. Because like, I mean, it started off as like a 1 week focus on art. And now it's become, you know, it's a full month, and and because of that, you do have the Black Rock working with them because, you know, art has become such a focus. And I think it's one of those things.
Thousands go through that town.
Right. And, you know, it's one of those things, I think just over time, there's a recognition that you know, small projects that start out small create a emphasis within the town. And therefore the town becomes known for something that it wasn't known. You know, 25 years ago, you would never have thought of Reno as being a very art-oriented town. I mean, they had a couple of independent theaters, but it was not very, it wasn't in the same fashion that it, you know, it's not the same thought that you have today about Reno. So, but yes, okay, I can work on that for a future meeting. And, you know, obviously I'll print out what other cities have done. I'll provide you lots of reading material about it. Beth?
I just posted to Angel in the chat about the Nevada Museum of Art, Art and Environmental Conference that's going on in September. So Angel, maybe you can send it out to all of us. It's actually costs about $150, but maybe we could get something for our whole committee so that we could participate, because it'll be a really good education. You look at some of the names of people that are going to be presenting. And then one other thing, Stuart, is that another city that has got a really interesting public art program is Brooklyn. And it's the same thing like what Camille said, there's a lot of collaborations going on between the city and various arts organizations.
Okay.
And it's also, that's the way too that they can reach the artists, because they already have their mailing lists, and a city would not have that kind of thing. So it's a way that we can get a much more diverse set of artists involved.
Yeah, you might, I mean, we might also want to reach out to the Black Rock organization. It's not, you know, there's a lot of artists. in
Right.
that.
Karen has talked about that in the past. Is trying to reach out to Black Rock to try and bring some of their artwork into Brisbane when we have appropriate places to
Yeah.
put it.
They're not necessarily the ones who, but they would know names. That's not what they do. They do more collaborations, kind of process things, but
I thought, okay. I mean, I was thinking that they're
they
the
give
ones
funding
who,
to them.
they're the ones who help figure out how to place the pieces that are homeless throughout the year. Is part of my understanding as well. Because when I was in Reno at one of our conferences, Black Rock made a presentation, and I think Angel was there as well, made a presentation concerning the collaboration between the artists on the desert, on the playa with the city of Reno. And I think Black Rock is one of those organizations that help coordinate the two.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. They have the names and they do that, but
So I mean, if we get involved with Black Rock at this point, as we, you know, that may be one of those things that as a city, when you're talking about Sierra Point or you're talking about the Baylands, you may want to have places where Plius type artwork can be stored in the meantime.
Hayes Valley's quadrangle is famous for that.
Okay.
It's all very exciting.
I think also, and I don't know, like to the extent that probably and Camille know about the cities that they suggested, but I think that Palm Springs has like a rather robust public art program as well. To have, why are you laughing? It's not good.
Oh my God, they're in so much trouble right now.
Really?
Oh my God, it's in the headlines. The art world is just all upset.
Really?
Oh my, yeah, they made this really misogynist Marilyn Monroe where people could come and take selfies underneath Marilyn Monroe's panties, and they're in big trouble.
Okay, well, maybe don't look at them.
Well,
Prior to that, I do know that they've had like pretty extensive public.
right, I mean, just because the artwork may not be good, sorry, Madison, just because the artwork may not be good, we could work through the process of it. I apologize, Madison, for
Well, I
cutting you
think we
off.
can find out what went wrong and try to avoid going down that road.
And try not to do that.
Exactly.
But I mean, I think if there are cities where you think that there is a good array of public art, letting me know that so I can work through the process, figuring out what they do, and then you can come together and say, yes, this part of it works for us, this part of it doesn't work for us. Here's the things that we don't want to see in public art in Brisbane. I mean, that idea of the large Marilyn Monroe may not be something that Brisbane would like to ever have.
Probably not.
But, back in the 60s and 70s, Marilyn Monroe is such a major figure in Palm Springs area. They said, oh, that just seems like what we need to have.
She does have panties on. It's just her
And
skirt
of
is
course-
a flutter.
And of course, the challenge is always is that the aesthetic changes over time. And that may be something from a Baylands perspective, or even from a Visitation Avenue perspective, that as this aesthetic changes, that public art gets changed out. I mean, you do have the idea of the Marilyn Monroe, but back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, statues of generals throughout the country were seen as a positive piece of public art, and they no longer are. Beth?
Yeah, that's a really good argument for why we want to have some temporary spaces for that reason, because it's true. And unfortunately, the Marilyn Monroe thing was done this year, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, believe it or not. But no, I do
Never
think also after a while you stop to see it, you stop seeing it.
Right.
So I think it's nice if we can find out some way to, particularly in the more built environments, like if we're doing land art, that's a little bit harder to change on a temporary basis, but in the built environment, it'd be nice to have situations where we could have temporary work and also pay the artists to like rent the work or something like that.
Right. I mean, one of the things that I enjoy is the fourth plinth at Trafalgar Square, where every year they have a process for picking a different artist to put something on the fourth plinth. So, having spaces like that that are available within the Baylands, to me, makes a lot of sense. Because the aesthetic changes all the time, and trying to keep up with it, and after 30 years, no matter what you pick may look dated.
Well, plus if it's changing out over time and you've got visitors to the Bay Area, it gives them, another opportunity to come and visit our
Right.
town and go to a restaurant or see something else there. So
And that should be part of the conversation when you talk about the Baylands public art, as to what the purpose of the public art in the Baylands is. And hopefully whoever we bring on to be the consultant to help us, they can guide us through that purpose type of a statement to make sure that we are hitting what we want to. Okay, we have about 15 minutes left. For the next item, which was trying to potentially finding a consultant to work with us on Visitation Avenue. And this comes from like, last, like, I guess it was almost 2 years ago now, because we didn't meet very much during COVID. What was being discussed was that the committee wanted to have an aesthetic along Visitation Avenue, and this is where the idea of some of the surprise art was talked about. This is the idea of having, being the main street of central Brisbane, being able to have an impact on the way that people who live and visit our town have a sense of who we are. And, so potentially to me, it made sense to also talk about, while we have the really big grand vision of the Baylands, to also work on something like Visitation Avenue that is maybe more manageable and that we can spend some of the $1 million that is in the bank on. So or do we have different ideas as to what we would want to see for a consultant on Visitation Avenue? Madison?
Consultant.
Hmm?
I just had like ideas for Visitation. I didn't have like. Is that what we're?
You have ideas for you have ideas.
I have ideas for like the art.
Oh, so and if we already have ideas for the art, do we need to bring a consultant in to try and bring in a consultant in to help have that conversation? Or do we as a committee want to have a conversation as to what kind of art you want to see, and then we can.
I mean, I think these are more smaller, like more manageable projects. I mean, feel free for anyone else to say otherwise, but I think that like, we as a committee could probably oversee smaller things like we did with the library, or, a mural here and there, or a sculpture here and there. I think like having a consultant would probably take a while for us to do all the interviews and like kind of get somebody on board. And we might be able to like at least start with something small, like a small project in the meantime. But I definitely think for like the scale of the Baylands, that's something that we absolutely need. We got to think of like, that's millions of dollars. And I think like we have to think about the integrated design of the whole space, or like on Crocker Trail, right? That's like a massive space that you're planning art out for multiple different spots. I think that Visitation's like a little bit more manageable, but I'm happy to, see what the rest of the group thinks. I just, Beth is new to the committee, so she wasn't around for the discussion about kind of some of the ideas that we had tossed around regarding Visitation Avenue. And I know that Lisa's gonna miss this, so we might have to fill her in later, but I just didn't know if it was worth like, when we talk about those like small surprise art that we keep referencing, if I should walk Beth through kind of where that idea came from.
Sounds good to me.
We don't have Camille with us anymore either.
What happened?
Sorry.
I mean, I'd love to hear about it, but I guess I just want to back up just a little bit too, in that so far we've had 2 projects that we've killed the mural at the skateboard park, and there was a letter that Angel sent out from Karen Lentz that about what happened in the library. From what I think what I was under the understanding that was going to be something that really looked very more abstract and colorful and reflective of light, and different, each one different. And I kind of think that it's important that I think that being able to do the smaller projects on Visitation are going to be a learning experience. But before we can jump into that, I feel like we need to kind of, figure out what happened with the library project, and how did we get what we've got now that's about to be installed. That doesn't, in my mind, look like anything that we saw on her website or what I heard you all talking about. And so I just don't want to skip over that step of what can we learn from what happened before, and also address Karen's letter that she sent in.
we want to add that to a future agenda, we can. We're not, unfortunately, it's not on the agenda for today.
Okay, I think that I don't know if I have to move to do that or whatever, but I just feel like before we move into any other kinds of projects that I think I need to understand like what went, how do we end up with what we have? And because it doesn't look anything like what I was under the impression we were kind of going for. And I guess I want to also ask you all if this is what you all planned on. I don't really know how that process worked or anything like that, but I feel like if we're going to start to thinking about new projects, I want to look at what happened in the ones that we've done so far so we can learn from that.
Danette, you have your hand up?
Yeah, well, I just want to say that this committee was not around. We were not involved in that. So it was a whole different committee. So I have no,
It was Parks Commission.
I mean, I can give a report as to how the library project came about. I can do that at a future meeting, but as I said, that's not on the agenda for today. Today, we're going to talk, more about prospective than retrospective. And I understand the idea that, Beth, you want to understand what happened in the past. And that could just be a conversation, I think a number of the committee members were on that already. So I can just have a conversation with you what the process was. You're
The
muted,
other thing,
unfortunately, Beth.
the other thing is that is what we are getting and installing in Labor Day on Labor Day, like, did it have reviews? Did we know what we were getting until we just saw this picture? Because it doesn't look anything like what I saw on her website at all. And so I just kind of also would like to know if the people who were in charge of okaying that project are okay with what we're getting, if this is what they wanted.
More than happy to put that on a future agenda.
Okay. Okay, but I just feel like before we can go on learning, thinking and imagining new projects, I need to know that we have a process where things are going to be reviewed along the way and we can have a chance to know what we're going to get before the installation.
And I don't think we can hold up moving forward to talk about something that happened in the past. I think they're two completely different subjects. We're on our agenda today was talking about do we need a consultant for visitation? And that's what we need to talk about in the few minutes that we have left.
Right, and the question is do you want to, do you want me to, I can do the same kind of research for something like visitation that we did, that I'm gonna do for the Baylands, but as opposed to looking at citywide type of art, look more at, something like where it's more compact type of art and see what the process that cities do for that. Like if it's,
my thought is that like, I think that, and tell me if I'm wrong, Stuart, but if we hire a consultant for the Baylands, I think that's like a cost that we can expense to the developer.
possibly.
But like if we hire a consultant for stuff that's like visitation specific, I'm just worried that so much of the money that we want to spend on art is going to come from our budget and go to our consultant. When I think that if we're dealing with like a small scale statue or a small scale mural or whatever, I think especially now with the new additions that we have to our committee, we have people who are really well versed in the art community. I think that I would just hate to see like so much of the budget go to when it could be spent on art. But again, I'm just one voice, so I'm open.
What I can do for the next meeting is put on what we could have on the agenda is maybe a further discussion on visitation, and since we're trying to keep the meetings to an hour, maybe talking about visitation is more than an hour's worth of a meeting, and maybe schedule it for an hour and a half and talk about the types of art that the different people on the committee would like to have on it, and to see what the best way to try and bring that to life would be.
I like them.
Yeah,
I
we
do
definitely
quite
need
care.
Camille and Lisa here for that.
Yeah.
Right, and that makes sense, what we would do is like maybe schedule, instead of an hour for a meeting, schedule an hour and a half, and talk about the type of art that people would want to see on visitation. And then based on the type of art that people would want to see on visitation, figure out what the best way to implement that vision would be.
Stuart, could you send out to everybody that thought process? And between now and our next meeting, maybe all of us can coalesce some of the ideas that we already have, like, you know, the ideas of little bronze squirrels or other animals found in Brisbane wrapped around the light poles and
Right, okay.
those kind of things that we can get our ideas together and offer them up for.
Right, and if you want, I could try and between now and then look at street level art with like images for street level art to include.
I don't see why not. The more the merrier.
Okay,
And
but does that, I mean, does it make sense to try and schedule for an hour and a half instead of just an hour? So that way, you know, people can have their enough time to talk about it.
I think you don't know. See what it comes up there.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't have anything more to talk about, we can always end early, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
unfortunately, I
highly
find
doubt that will
that
happen.
I was gonna say, unfortunately, I find that we usually go the other way,
Yeah,
where
exactly.
we end late, and that's what I want to be cognizant of what we tell people of how long the meeting is going to be, because I know people have other things that they try and get done during the day.
Sounds good.
Okay. So how about if we schedule that for the next meeting, and then maybe the meeting after that, we can talk about what the process was for the library. And then from there, go with hopefully have a little bit more of and maybe also talk about, that'll give me enough time possibly to do research for the Baylands as to what is out there that we can do for that. Yeah.
My only concern is that is the library a done deal? Is there like, is that
Yes.
there's nothing?
I
to
mean,
do?
it's a project that has been approved. It's a project that is going to be installed over Labor Day. If we at this point tell the artist that we don't want it installed, I don't know when we'd be able to install it again. When should be available.
And my understanding is,
Oh, go ahead, Angel.
I was just going to say, my understanding is that she has spent a lot of time understanding the light of the library, how the sun hits through. So I still think maybe what was photographed is maybe not, it maybe doesn't look that as flat as it is, because I know she spent a lot of time on light and even the installation of the lights with the electrical engineers,
And the
make sure
architect.
like lights are, hitting it at certain areas. So, I mean, maybe, even though maybe we didn't get to see it halfway through, but I know we're not supposed to talk about all that right now.
Right. I mean, as I said, we could talk about it because I think the committee, the committee had a good rationale at the time as to why they picked this person, why they trusted this person to be able to do an installation. Not to get too into it, but the committee said we want to see something with that's representative of butterflies and working with the light to encompass more of the library than just the artwork itself. And I can give an explanation, and I'll write up what the history of that, and we can talk about what do we want to learn from that. But I think from a art perspective that this is a project that's going forward.
Just to add on, we haven't seen it physically in the space yet. And I think that trying to do a rendering of glass is like probably so challenging, which is what that was. And so, the beauty that you're seeing on her website is photos of the actual work after it's been installed, and you're capturing light and you're seeing that. And I think that she's fully capable of delivering something that's stunning. I think that before we jump to say that something's bad or that it's not delivering on what we said, I think, we should reserve judgment until we can see it in person, see the light, and see how it performs in the space. And then at that point, then we can determine what the lessons are to be learned, if there are any. But she is a fabulous artist, and she, like, when we looked at her portfolio, there was nothing that she made that I didn't think was absolutely beautiful. And yeah, I trust that she's going to deliver something fantastic for us. So I think we should just hold off and wait and see what it looks like. And then at that point, you know, if it's atrocious and we really believe that at that point it's not great, we can discuss it at the committee level.
And I feel like artists have certain amount of wiggle room. They are artists, and it's from their vision as well. Aside from the guidance of whoever's hiring them, you know, they have some room to be their own artist and present something. I don't know.
So for next time, we'll talk about Visitation Avenue.
Great.
What, do we have a meeting scheduled, or do we do this on an ad hoc basis, Angel?
We may want to keep August as a free month, unless we feel like that's really going to get close to having to discuss about the specific plan. If the Bayland specific plan is going to be coming up, then that might put some pressure. But we don't have two of the members here, so I'd like to at least do a doodle poll.
Okay,
I won't
But-
be available, as you know, for the entire month of August.
Okay.
oh, okay, so that means September.
A lot of people are, August is a tough month. I know that I think Camille,
Page out of your book, Karen.
We've got a baby coming, so you
I was
be
gonna say I'm gone the whole time. I'm unavailable.
yeah. I know that Camille, I think, is also quite spotty from what I remember her saying as well. So I think August is a little bit tough, maybe towards the very end of the month, possibly, if not maybe Labor Day week.
not me.
That'll give us plenty of time to do research and bring stuff back to the committee for on street level art.
4:30.
I know.
On the dot. Well done.
All right. See you guys later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.